When we're looking from the front, remember that we have our rib cage, just an egg shape. We're gonna open it up at the top. Our clavicles are gonna clear that rib cage. We're gonna open it up at the thoracic arch. We're gonna get our obliques. We're gonna look for our pelvic triangle, pelvic points. We're gonna look for this measurement here to equal this measurement here to equal the head. And we'll look for our trapezius to come across. We're gonna look for our pectoral shelf. We'll look for the deltoids to come about that same measurement down. We're gonna look to double this whole piece to the ground, and then halfway from the pubic symphysis, we'll have our knees. Remember that in men, we want the rib cage to be a little wider than the pelvis. On women, we want the pelvis to be wider. And so we're just remembering our general measurements here. So our knees, we're going to look for our calves, and then we'll look for where the wedge of the foot's going to start. So just looking for the armature. Also before that, let's get our elbows lined up with our rib cage. We'll see if we see the medial epicondyle, the transition muscles of the brachioradialis extensor carpi radialis. We'll look for the arm to be 2/3, the lower arm to be 2/3 of the upper arm, the hand to be 2/3 of the lower arm. Just looking for an oven mitt shape on the hands. So our armature is going to be egg shape that we're opening up, 2 eggs for the obliques, triangle for the pelvis. Get your clavicles in there. When you get the head in there, we take the whole thing and double it, and halfway to the knees. So we're going to remember this as we go. From the back view, we get our egg shape of the rib cage in here, get our axis line in here, cut off the bottom of the rib cage. That's right where your obliques are going to go. Put the line of your shoulders in, let it clear the rib cage, and halfway down we're going to get our shoulder blades. We're going to look to see if this upper section and lower section are half and half with each other. And if I'm drawing a female, I want the hips to be wider than the rib cage. Hook in your deltoid. Look for the small of the waist. Look for the obliques to merge with the pelvis if we're drawing a female. And I'm going to look for how long is the gluteal fold. We'll look for the sacral triangle. Once I get my head in here, go a little lower with that. Remember that the halfway down the gluteal fold is our anatomic midpoint. That'll be our heels. For women, the wide point's going to be lower than that. Anatomic midpoint for men, that would be the wide point. So for women, look to see. It could be at the bottom of the gluteal fold. It could be a little higher, a little lower. And you'll look to see, does that line up with the shoulders? Does it line up with less, more? Halfway down from this gluteal fold, again, you'll have your H shape of the back of the knee. And then we're looking for round on the inside, flat on the outside. And then where's the heel? What direction is your foot lining up? And so again, our armature is just a egg shape cut off at the bottom and the top with a couple J's. We're going to put in our obliques. We're going to put in the circle of the pelvis. It'll be narrower or wider than the rib cage depending on if it's male or female. Look for about a half and half once you get your head in there. So to get the top of the head, it's not quite to the top of the shoulders because remember the pit of the neck is lower than the back of the rib cage. So you do maybe even with the top of your shoulder blades here. So if I double that to the top of the head, once I get this whole measurement takes me to the floor, halfway back up takes you to the knees. So we're just getting our general shapes in here, because once we get to the gestures, we have to add foreshortening, we have to add movement to it. So the side view, just remember, we're looking for our egg shape of the rib cage. We're going to open up that egg at the top for the first circle of ribs, halfway down for the thoracic arch. The oblique's going to fit in there. The pelvis will be a C shape from the side, and we're going to see, okay, shoulder to the bottom of the rib cage, does that equal oblique and the pelvis? And again, some people are fleshier or less fleshy in the pelvis, so it might be a little more, a little less. Just look at your person. We're going to have a flat space, and then the leg will begin. The abdomen will come right down to the belly button, pooch out just a little, and then come in about halfway into the C shape here. You'll look for your, do you see the J shape of your scapulas? Look for where the arm's going to start. That deltoid now will come down, elbow ending about even with the rib cage. Look for rib cage to the pit of the neck, to the top of the head. Note that the face is going to line up closer to the front of the body than the back. And if we're drawing a female, you will attach the pelvis to the oblique, and you'll add the breast dropping from the pectoral shelf. If you're drawing a male, we're going to have a separate oblique, and the pectoral shelf will then come forward. And then when we figure out our halfway in our C shape, we're going to say top of the head to that, takes us to the ground. Halfway is the knee. Look for the meat of the leg to come out and back. Set up the knee. I'm drawing a male. Go just a little thinner on the pelvis, and then flatter on the outside, rounder on the outside, and then we get down and we have the wedge shape. If we see the other leg, we'll look again, flat space, and then the leg, and you can go accordingly. So again, from the side where it's egg shape, open it up, egg shape for the obliques, C shape for the pelvis, flat space, bring the abdomen down, hook in your J shape, and go from there. And once you get your head in there, then you just take your half and half to the floor. So again, we're just going to be looking for these general shapes. And what happens in a gesture drawing now, we look for our structure, which is our armature, which is this, our mass that we've been working on all along. What is the difference between the underplane, the side plane, the underplane, the top plane? How do I start to show the difference? Whether it's a more squared off shape, whether it's a rounder shape, with both the mass and our line quality. So lighter, darker, even the cylinder. Sometimes the limbs can kind of look cylinder-like. We want that to wrap around. So we mass off the underplane. Or if it's sitting on its side, you might mass off both sides. So you get this type of thing. So again, structure, mass, line quality are the three things that we've been looking for as we put our anatomy together, but now we're going to add a couple things. We're going to add movement, because your person's not just going to be standing there stiff. They're going to start to reach and bend and twist. And we have to know now what happens to these things. Now what happens to these shapes as they do these things. We're going to look more for our alignment. So if your person is twisted or they're reaching or, bending somehow, now what does the elbow line up with? Now what does the knee line up with? And we're always just going to be looking for angles. So we've been looking for these things before, as we, especially alignment and angles, as we put the structure together, but we really rely on it as the models start to move. So in our gestures, these are the main things that we have to think about. So the purpose of these anatomic gestures is to understand the anatomy as it moves and how it looks from person to person, and to get people's structure down, because we all vary so much. So how does one person's structure vary from another, and these quicker 5 to 10 minute drawings really help us to hone in on what our model is going to look like when we're doing a long-term pose. And it also helps us to continue to study and reinforce the anatomy that we know, and look at how it varies when our person starts to move.